As I mentioned before, HTML is a markup language. Consequently, it's made up of something called tags that add descriptors to what type of content you have within the tags. A tag has the following structure. It has the tag name within angled brackets, followed by attributes, as shown in the image on the screen. An attribute can have one of several names, and it would have a value associated with it in most conditions. And at most times, we will have a closing tag which has a slash within it and the same tag name. We'll be seeing a few examples of those tags in just a moment. So as I said before, to review, a markup language is made up of tags which allow for defining the properties of the text or content that gets displayed. Tags are used to provide useful information about the page, content, and what each of the elements are. Tags often have accompanying attributes that allow you to specify additional information about the content. Below, the table has, in the image in front of you, the table has the names of the types of the different tags in one column, examples of those tags, and how in the second column, and how it would be written in HTML. And then the third column has how it would be displayed on your screen if you were to use those tags. So let's start with the first tag, the line break. A line break or a new line tag has the form of angled bracket, BR, slash, closing angle bracket. Or you don't even need the slash. In the newer versions of HTML, all you need is angled bracket, BR, and closing angled bracket. So if you have the text first line followed by the line break tag and then the text second line, it would show up as in the example column. It would have the first line text, a new line, and the second line text. The next tag we will look at is the paragraph tag. The paragraph tag often is used to define paragraphs in HTML. It has an angled bracket, P, closing angle bracket, and the text you would like to have as a paragraph, and then an angle bracket, a slash, a P, and a closing angle bracket. Note that in HTML, usually, if you do not specify the paragraph tag, a space will if you put a space between two words, it'll always, or more than one space between two words, it'll always show up as one space at most, unless you use the paragraph tag. So if we look at the example that my mouse is over, you'll see that I had about 3 spaces between the paragraph and the text words. So the example shows how this would display in the actual browser. It would have the paragraph followed by 3 spaces and then text. The next tag of note is the bold tag. It is basically a B within the angled brackets, then the text you want to show in bold, and then a closing B tag. That would present, if you had the words bold tag in between, bold text in between the 2 B tags, it would present as bold text, except the words would be stronger or have more width to them, as shown in the example column. The italics tag, much like in MS Word, causes the words to slide. So in HTML you would use the I in between 2 tags, then the text you want to slant, and then a closing slash I tag. And that would result in text being slanted to the side. Next we have headers. Headers, in order to define a header, you would use the H1 tag, H2 tag, which would be a subheader, or the H3 tag, which would be a subheader. and in between the H1 opening tag and the H1 closing tag, you'd have the words you want to make into a header. So if you look on the right, we have the first header, which is larger by default, and suddenly goes to the next line, because in HTML, unless you specify differently, each headers have their own line. So the first header that is surrounded by H1 tags is bold and much bigger than the second header, which is surrounded by H2 tags, but they're still bigger, or they're distinct from the regular fonts that you would be displayed in your browser. Now for the next tag of note that you will often run into, and I feel is a basic markup tag, is the table tag. The table tag is actually special because it is meant to contain additional tags that define the rows as well as the columns in your table. A table has rows and columns that are aligned. So within a table tag, you would have the tr tag, which defines a row, and you would also have a tr tag, a /tr tag, which defines the end of that row for each row that you have in your table. Within that row, you'd have a td tag, which specifies a column, and within the td tag, you would have the text for that column and a /td. And then for the next column, you'd have another td tag followed by the text you want to display and another /td. So in the example on the screen, we have a table, tr, a td, and then an h1 column, which stands for the first heading of that table, /td, then a td tag again, and h2, which is for the second heading, and then a /td, and then we end that row. And if you look to the right, in the example, we'll see a h1 and a h2, defining the first row of that table. And then we define the start of a new row with another tr, and then we specify the column data with the td and c1, which is column data 1, and then a /td ending that column, and then another column, and the end of the row. So as you can see, the actual HTML text translates to what you see on the right. The next tag of note is images. So if you want to display an image on your HTML page, you would use the img tag followed by a space and the src attribute. I mentioned that tags could have attributes associated with them, and within double quotes you would have the URL of the image. So if you're using your Chrome browser and you look at that at the URL that you usually put in there, sometimes you can have it pointing to an image, and in this case, if you were to replace the fun with actual image, it would display the image that you were pointing to in your browser. Next are links. Links start with have the form of an A and the attribute of a ref, and then that attribute actually points to the URL that you want the link text to go to once you click on it. You've probably run into a link while using a website. It's basically a bunch of text that is blue and has an underline usually, and you click on it and it'll take you to another website. Of course, you can modify how it's presented, but we won't get into that at the moment. Next, we have forms. We won't be covering forms in this tutorial. However, with regards to forms, basically you could just input information into your website and have submit it. But don't worry if you don't understand that now. We'll have another lecture that goes into them in more detail. And then we have iframes. Iframes are a way to embed another website in your page. They aren't as often used these days, because they used to have security vulnerabilities associated with them. But for example, if you had an iframe which had a source of https://w3schools.com, and then the closing iframe, it would show up in a smaller window within your HTML page, that website, and you would be able to scroll around it and move around it. Next, we have ordered lists, which are used to display numeric lists. So you would have, as if you look on the right, you see a 1 and then the A for the first element, and a 2 for, and then a B for the second element. An ordered list has the tags OL surrounding it, and for each element that you want in that list, you would place LI and then a closing LI surrounding the text you want to display, or the HTML you want to display for that element on that list. And then unordered lists are much like the ordered lists, except they have a bullet instead of a number defining them. And they are very much the same, except instead of a OL, you will have a UL, which translates to unordered list, and a closing UL tag surrounding the elements of that list. And finally, we have comments. A comment is basically information in your raw HTML that you don't want displayed on the page. It's basically a note that you leave behind for other coders, and it has no functional purpose in all programming languages, but in the case of HTML, it has the form of angled bracket, exclamation mark, 2 dashes, the actual contents of that comment, then 2 more dashes, and closing square tag. Okay, don't worry if you didn't get all that right now, because we will get back to it in the future and go into it in more detail as we're doing examples. However, if you want to see more of the tags, because I just covered the foundational ones, you can go to w3schools.com/tags, and it'll have a list of all the tags that HTML currently supports. And by clicking on one of the tags, it'll go into more detail on how to use that tag. Okay, so now ASCII characters. ASCII characters are a special type of character that you can use in your HTML. They're used to display characters on an HTML page that your keyboard doesn't have, although it could also display characters your keyboard does have. They start with an ampersand sign followed by a code. The and NBSP semicolon tag translates into a space, and the following website, https://www.ascii/code.com, can be used to find a list of these codes. So let's take a look at that now. So if we went to that page, ASCII-code.com, and scroll down, you'll see that we have a list of we have a column called HTML number. If we were to place these codes on our HTML page, it would actually show an interesting symbol. So let's scroll down to something you'd probably understand. So here we have a HTML number and HTML name for displaying the euro symbol. So if you were to put and euro semicolon in your HTML, it would display the euro symbol. So by using these special codes, you're able to display things that you usually wouldn't be able to display. And here's the chart as we just looked at. And yeah, that is all for now, until the next lecture, where we'll be doing an example to actually implement what we just learned.